Through the veil where the darkness grows, a rebel heart ignites, it glows. Each step I take defies the rain. Eternum's grip won't bind my chain.
What's going on, everyone? Doc here with Eyes Wide Shot Gaming, and today we are happy to bring you our amazing yet simple Fire Staff build for New World Aeternum. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support us as well as motivate us to keep making content for all of our awesome viewers like you. Alright, let's jump right into this spicy blend of damage and flair with a build that is as versatile as it is flashy. Let's begin with our armor pieces. This is going to be a medium build riddled with hoplite parts, which will allow us versatility in both PvP as well as PvE. For our headwear, we have the heavy hoplite helm, 355.2 elemental armor and 355.2 physical armor, giving us a magnify of 36. We equipped the Ignited Thrust Ward Runeglass, which gives us a 4% increase to thrust damage absorption and increases our fire attacks damage by 2%. We are going to be heavily stacking into fire damage, since after all, this is a pure fire staff build. With the helmet, we have Enchanted Ward helping us take 4% less damage from light and heavy attacks, another fire harnessing increasing our fire damage by another 2%, and finally health, which will increase our max health by 2.4% just for some survivability. On our chest piece, we have pretty much an identical setup. We equipped the heavy hoplite breastplate, 828.9 elemental armor and 828.9 physical armor, raising our magnify by another 36 points. I know most people sweat the magnify stats on too many armor pieces, but let's not forget our fire staff draws its power solely from intelligence, so we don't have to hold back when dumping all of our magnify into one thing. Just as on our helmet, we have Enchanted Ward, fire harnessing, and health equipped on our chestwear, as well as an identical rune glass to protect us from thrust damage and raise our fire damage. For our gloves, we have the hoplite hand covers. To keep us in the medium build department, we are using light gloves, 107.4 elemental and physical armor, carrying another 36 magnify, as well as Enchanted Ward, fire harnessing, and the Ignited Thrust Ward Runeglass. But for our last perk, we threw on Refreshing to reduce max cooldowns by 4%. As much as we love high damage, we also have to consider this build will be used outside of PvE. Moving on to our legwear, we come to our first artifact, the Azoth Conductors. This is a medium legwear raising both our elemental and physical armor by 260.6. Another 36 magnify coming in from this armor piece, as well as the artifact perk Magician's Boon. This will allow us to deal 15% more elemental damage as long as we are in a medium weight build. For the rune glass, we went with the Ignited Physical Ward. We gain 2% to physical damage absorption and increase our fire attacks damage by another 2%. With this legwear, we again have Refreshing to further reduce our max cooldown, health to keep us alive over all the damage mitigation we have so far, and fire harnessing to once again increase our fire damage by another 2%. Finally, our final armor piece. We have another light piece of gear, the hoplite shoes. It's a hoplite piece, so we get another 36 magnify on. And once again, we delve back to the Ignited Thrust Ward Runeglass to protect us from archers and musketeers. On this piece of gear, we have thrown on Hasted Vigor to reduce the potency of incoming damage over time effects by 7% per piece of armor with this perk, as well as grant us 10% haste for 5 seconds. We only have one armor part with this perk since we have other perks to focus on. Along with it, we have yet another fire harnessing and Refreshing to further reduce our max cooldowns by 4% and increase our fire damage by yet another 2%. We want to hop over to the jewelry prior to breaking down the weapons, so for our amulet, we have the Phoenix artifact. Another 36 magnify, and this artifact's special perk is Phoenix Vengeance. This will protect us from dying when we take lethal damage, aka the final blow, and allow us to regain 100% of our health. But we do become inflicted with vengeance. This will reduce our ability to heal or be healed by 200%, and we start to take tick damage equal to 20% of our max health every second until we die or until we get killed. So if we don't get hit, we have 5 seconds to survive, and mid-fight in PvP, we are looking more so at around 1 to 2 hits before we are down for the count. We also have on Fire Ward, which increases our damage absorption. It would be pretty embarrassing to die to fire while being a Fire Staff user. Next on the list is Purify. This will allow us to lose all of our debuffs if we are hit while we are below 50% health. And our next perk is Stamina Recovery. This works hand in hand with Purify. When we are hit while below 50% health, we gain 60 stamina. So we lose all our debuffs and are able to dodge out of the way. And finally, we have Health. This further increases our max health by another 7.7% of the base value. For our ring, we are using the Fireproof Mithril Crafted Ring of the Scholar. This boosts our intelligence by 32%, increases our fire damage by 7.1%, gives us healing, which heals us for 7.1% of the damage we deal, and we even have the burning perk on it to increase our base duration of burns we apply by 24%. Not to mention, we threw on another Fire Ward to mitigate another 6% of any fire damage we might receive. Finally, for our last piece of jewelry, we have the Hoplite Earring. 36 Magnify, our last Fire Ward to keep us protected for a grand total of 18% from any fire damage, Refreshing to top off our cooldown all the way to 16%, Refreshing Toast, which will help with consumables cooldown by 10%, and Regenerating, which heals us for 0.53% of our health every second. This is more so beneficial during PvE than PvP though. Now let's move on to our weapons and tie this build all together. Our primary weapon is the Hoplite Fire Staff. This gives us a whopping 42 intelligence to really seal the points into having high damage. We threw on the Ignited Rally Rune Glass to increase our damage while at full health by 12%, and our hits inflict burn, dealing an additional 8% to the burn we already do since we're using a Fire Staff per second for 2 seconds. We're also running Disdained Infliction to increase the potency of outgoing damage over time by 15%, since our straight damage isn't the only thing we rely on. Every hit we unleash on an enemy only further extends the duration of our burn by 1 second each time, and if we are outside of PvP, we deal an additional 5% base damage against hostile AI targets inflicted any damage over time effect. Since we want our opening shot, the Fireball, to really send a message, we have Empowering Fireball to increase the impact damage by 14% and an additional 21% to targets above 50% health. And finally, the last perk is Keenly Jagged. This will allow us to inflict bleed on critical hits, dealing 10% of our weapon's damage per second for 6 seconds. For our secondary weapon, we have on the Pestilence Blunderbuss artifact. Another massive Magnify increase of 42, carrying with it the Blighted Enchantment perk, which allows attacks from both of our weapons to inflict a stack of poison and decrease their incoming healing by 5% and outgoing heals by 2.5% per stack for 3 seconds, a maximum of 3 stacks. We also have Pest, which increases our damage by 8% against poison and diseased enemies. The remainder of these perks don't really apply to our Fire Staff as they don't affect both weapons. So far, with each critical hit we do, we will inflict burn, poison, and bleed, not to mention any follow-up attacks to extend these damage over time effects. For our Heart Rune, we have the Cunning Heart Rune of Stone Form. This is for some added protection from getting stun locked in place, unable to escape or to fight back. With this, we gain an additional 10% armor for 5 seconds per hit taken, all the way up to 30% after 6 hits, and we gain Fortify on activation, increasing our armor for another 10% for 5 seconds, totaling up to 40% after 6 hits. Let's go over our point allocation as well as how we built the skills on our Fire Staff. As you can see, it's very cut and dry. We throw 50 points into Strength, 500 into Intelligence, and the rest into Constitution, getting us to 101 with food. The Fire Staff scales 100% off of Intelligence, so we don't need to worry about Magnify going over the 350 mark. The 50 Strength is to increase our heavy attack damage by 10%, and our light attack damage by 5%. And of course, the Constitution is valuable at the 100-point threshold to give us that extra 10% increase to max health. For the points, it's simple. We heavily focus on the Fire Mage side with the exception of 2 skills, Spell Focus, since we don't need to worry about mana with this build, and Flare, because we don't want our heavy attacks to lose out on 120% of the damage when we are PvPing. Instead, we threw those 2 extra points into the Pyromancer side with Pyromania for the increase to our base damage against burning targets by 10%, and Let It Burn to give us some more protection with a 10% Fortify when we deal smolder damage. Overall, this leaves us with a solid all-around build that is able to withstand an onslaught comfortably and return fire. No pun intended. Let's take a quick look at what kind of damage we can deal to the average player with the help of our good friend and fellow company mate, ThePipinator. He is sitting at an average of 16,000 health with a medium build. As you can see, it only takes us a few hits in a few seconds to devastate the health, and for those enemies that might be running away, our burn, bleed, and poison will take care of them. We hope this build helps you all to further enjoy New World Aeternum. And as always, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and until next time, so long.